right, it says go live. You know what that means, Steve?
I don't know what that means.
It means we're live, Steve. Come on. Come on. Hey,
I was
Steve,
on the Today Show once in the audience, so that's my claim to fame.
You were on the Today Show once?
You know, like out in the stand, you know, outside. Katie Couric interviewed me, I think.
Wow.
That's where I got my big break.
All the way to Integrate Live, huh?
Yep, now I'm here.
All right, guys. Hey, it is Wednesday. That means it's rundown time. Next week is our virtual workshop. I'm joined today by Kyle Carew from Kepware and Steve Mason, an overall nice guy who happens to be employed by Canary Labs. And to our audience, you might notice that we are one light today. And that's our buddy Alan Ray is currently on his way to Tajikistan, where he'll be visiting his family, and I believe is probably right now at an airport in Istanbul. So I don't think Alan's going to be able to make it, but you never know. He might pop in, and if he does, we'll get him in. But guys, today we are here to talk about how to up your OPC game. And Kyle, I feel like you know a thing or two when it comes to OPC.
Yeah, I try to. I'll claim Kepware as a whole knows collectively more than I do, but yeah, I dabble a bit.
Sure. And your background, Kyle, if I remember from other episodes, you were working for Rockwell. You've been in this industry for a long time. You've seen a lot of integration work.
I have, yeah. Actually, I was reflecting on this with my wife actually a couple days ago. But yeah, it will be 10 years this August being in this industry for me. So I've worked, for a Rockwell distributor. I did all sorts of stuff with PLCs, information software. I had a couple year stint with industrial networking. So did, got a bunch of Cisco certifications, did all that good stuff. And then for the last about 5 years or so, being on the Kepware team here in Portland. So yeah, I've basically grew up in factories in my 20s, and now here I am.
Awesome. And Steve, obviously I know you from Canary. Steve's been really running support at Canary for, I would almost say, Steve, we're probably at 6 or 7 years, right?
This will be 6 years in the summer I've been here. Not necessarily running support, but at this point, yeah, maybe I've been in running it for the last 3 or 4 years, ever since Paul Showalter exited the building.
I was getting ready to say we talked about it. I think maybe. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. I was at Intellect and was joining Arlen and Travis Cox on a conversation, and in that conversation, I talked about what I had heard termed the gray hair tsunami, or the washing out of all of the tribal knowledge of the generation that has built so much. And I think nothing is more true than the knowledge that Paul Showalter had to put into your head in that transition, right?
Mm. Yes, he only passed a little bit of gray on to me. I'm still building that out right now, but yeah. It'll be a few more years before I get to his status.
Yeah, but I bring all of this up because both Steve and Kyle, to our audience, and also, by the way, hi everybody on LinkedIn. 93 people currently on the stream. Thank you so much for joining us. We are monitoring the comments, so questions that you have for Kyle, for Steve, for myself, drop them in on the LinkedIn comments. I am watching it, and we'll make sure we come back to you on it. If you would, tell us where you're joining us from. Country, region, city, state. Don't need your address, but feel free. So the reason I bring this up is Steve and Kyle have a very common intersection point and of a shared experience, and it's all about logging data or connecting client tools to OPC servers, right? So Kyle, if you would, to our audience, set the stage for what the last 20 years has looked like inside of your standard manufacturing facility when it comes to OPC connectivity. What would it look like if we walked into the factory next door and started poking around?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for that, because this is absolutely my favorite topic to talk about. So really what you're asking is sort of like, what is the evolution of industrial connectivity? That's sort of what I'm gauging. So if we bring things back to the 90s or so, I would say the biggest challenge at that point was interoperability. So the idea that, hey, if I have a Rockwell PLC and I need that to talk to a Siemens HMI or vice versa, that was very difficult to do. You could definitely do it, but it may have required like, well, maybe I have to make my own, build my own driver for this, what have you. It was very difficult. Thankfully, these guys from the OPC Foundation kind of came in and said, well, let's solve this problem. How can we make this better so that we can get rid of vendor lock-in, and we can really start to push forward, best of breed, if you will. So, hey, again, unbiased here, but like, hey, let's say, yeah, maybe Rockwell makes the best PLC, but we don't necessarily like their HMI solution. Well, now you can kind of pick and choose, which was awesome. It was a great step forward. However, there is still a challenge where, hey, great, we have this open protocol that everybody kind of agreed upon, but there's still no incentive for a Siemens or a Rockwell or whatever automation house to develop drivers for their competition, because now you're just enabling your competition. So little plug for Kepware, that's kind of where Kepware came in, helped solve that problem. So great. So we fast forward to the 90s, interoperability becomes less and less of an issue. And now we're in we'll call it like the early 2000s. At that point, I would say one of the biggest challenges is more around like, hey, we want to start getting some of this really valuable industrial data. We want to push that outside of the traditional four wall of the factory. So that might be, we want to push things to like a SQL database for maybe batch records. Maybe we do want to get things to a historian this time. So we start to see a little bit more of like, hey, I'm not just connecting point A to point B. It's becoming a little bit more of a larger system. Fast forward even more, 2010s, now we're looking at things like the cloud. We're looking at things of like, hey, we're looking at bigger data. We're trying to do much more with this connectivity. So now the challenge becomes, well, how can I get data from all these random disparate devices? How can I aggregate that data and then translate all of that data into something where I can send it to the cloud, or translate it to a protocol where I can send it to a historian or to a database or something like that. So all of a sudden, this data that's been so important, all of a sudden is going from like a point solution to more like, hey, we're trying to cover everything. We're trying to get data everywhere. And one of the things that I think has been really interesting is, and there's probably a better term for it, but I kind of think of it as this leapfrog effect. So we look at 2014, 2015, 2016, mid 2010s, we're starting to see that big data trend come around. But the problem was, and I experience this all the time, Steve, I'm sure you have too, and same with you, Jeff, where a customer will say, hey, I want to start collecting data from my plant floor. We say, great, what data do you want? And they say, well, we want all of it. And obviously we go, well, we can get that all, but I don't think you're aware of how much data that actually is. And then we show them and they go, well, that's too much. Let's back it up. Let's get a little bit more prescriptive. But now, in 2024, with the advancement of AI, the advancement of just advanced analytic platforms, we can now actually consume all of that big data. So they say, we want all the data. Here you go. They can do things with it. So I say all that. So really, we've gone from connectivity. We've gone from like a point solution where interoperability was the biggest challenge to now where, while that still needs to be addressed, the bigger challenge is how do I collect data in a standardized way, in a secure way, and in a way that's scalable across all of my factories, across all of my plants, not just necessarily at one machine.
Still a lot of old Kep servers out there, right? Like everywhere.
Yes.
Old installs from the 90s, just running, trugging along, no issues.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Dozens of Kep servers in a plant. Lots of remote logging sessions, Steve, that you see when it comes to connectivity, right?
Yeah, I mean, more and more people are wanting not to install you locally to an OPC server, so you're wanting to connect remotely. And with OPC DA, you're going through decom to do that, and nobody wants to touch that. So, with OPC UA, it's only going through a single port, so that has made it much easier to configure and to manage. So I would just, from Canary's perspective, from my perspective, when I started just 6 years ago, OPC DA was still like our primary source of collection. And we didn't even actually have an OPC UA client to connect. It was shortly after I started, we actually came up with that collector. And since then, there's been a slow transition that now I almost never see anyone using our OPC DA client to collect data. It's either UA or MQTT, but almost never DA. And part of the big reason is because of decom, which is locked down and just a mess. And OPC UA just has more functionality or security built into it. It's just a better product. So.
Yeah. And on the OPC UA management side, Kyle, I guess where I'm leading, of course, is to talk about Kepware Plus. But to our audience, to I think most of the audience, and tell me, audience, if I'm wrong, but super familiar with Kep Server, and maybe just walk us through quickly, Kyle. I've got a piece of equipment. I need to connect to it. Server says, "Hey, great. Which driver pack do you want?" Right. Select the appropriate driver pack. Install Kep Server. Connect to the piece of equipment. Now I've got an OPC server. Other clients can connect to it and consume data from that piece of equipment. Right. And of course, the issue becomes, depending on how a plant has been architected, I might have 20 of those or 30 of those little OPC servers. Maybe I only have one, but it's unlikely I have a single OPC server. I probably have multiple. But now we can move into this architecture of, well, how do I bring those together? Well, I guess two parts, right? How do I bring those together, and how do I get away from a business model of being limited to only be able to connect via certain connectivity suite to a piece of equipment? And I think this is the segue for Kepware Plus, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. Took my thunder a little bit, but it's fine.
Sorry.
No. So no, but you're absolutely right? So for the audience that is familiar with Kepware, yes, you're used to, we'll call it the legacy purchasing model, right? Like exactly as you said, hey, I have this pump machine here. I need this one driver to feed into my HMI. Great, call us up. Here's your Allen Bradley suite. You're good to go. That still works. That's still a viable option. But as I said before, with sort of the evolution of where connectivity is going, that solution doesn't scale well for a number of reasons. One being technology, but two, a little bit more on the commercial side. So I'll probably outline a problem or a pain point that I think a lot of our customers feel, which is, hey, yeah, we have 30, 40 instances of Kepware. But each of those, instances maybe have multiple licenses attached to it. So, hey, I got the manufacturing suite, I have data logger, I have the IoT gateway, whatever it might be. So now you're dealing with, well, I have a bunch of different support renewal dates. I have a slew of hundreds of licenses that I need to keep track of. Like, it becomes a pain. It doesn't scale well. And on top of that, let's say, hey, we have this IoT initiative coming down. Now I need to start applying, IoT gateway to all these different servers. Like, it just becomes a mess from a commercial standpoint. So Kepware Plus was our answer to help with the commercial and the technical side. So if I were to give the overall high umbrella description of it, right? So Kepware Plus, it's our enterprise industrial connectivity solution that standardizes the secure and seamless movement of data between industrial devices and IT/OT systems.
Hold on, say it again. Let's break it down into chunks.
Yeah, I would say very marketing, but that's what we're doing. So, all right, so so I'll go in here. So,
hang on, let me read it again.
Yeah. So Jeff, maybe I'll ask you, do you want to hear the commercials first, or do you want to hear the technical side of it first?
Well, I think the technical, right, first. Yeah. What's the advantage? Why do we care about the commercial?
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So for technical, right? So as we're going through and we try to standardize on our connectivity, one of the things that comes up in one of the challenges, well, how can I manage this at scale? Meaning, do I have visibility into all of my instances? Do I know what's going on? And also, can I configure all of these instead of remote desktoping in and doing all that good stuff? So one of the features of Kepware Plus is this SaaS capability that we have. So it's actually one screen where I can see all of my Kep servers, I can configure them, and I can read their individual event logs. I can see information about the versioning. I can basically get a snapshot of my fleet of Kepware instances out there. Now, before everybody freaks out, I know I said SaaS and the cloud and that whole thing. We're not sending any industrial data to the cloud in this point. It is just configuration data. It's the event log, and it's just the, hey, I've got 12 versions of 6.14 out there, and that, whatever. It's all of that. So no industrial data going to the cloud, all just configuration. So that's one portion of it. Some of the other features that we have are for Kepware Plus that are focused around, the enterprise and management. One of the other ones is like a Windows Active Directory integration. So if you're going through and you're familiar with Kepware, every instance of Kepware has its own local directory. With Kepware Plus, you're saying, well, you can do that if you want, but if you have someone that's managing your Windows Active Directory, you can just integrate that right in. So that becomes a lot easier. There's a security play there as well. But the thing that we're talking about today would be around our new UA gateway, which really is sort of our modernized approach on UA. So what that means is we're looking at things like support for complex and structured data. So things like nested nodes, and we have federated browsing. There's new updated security encryptions. And then eventually down the road, I'm gonna be ambiguous about a timeline here. We're looking at things like, hey, can we ingest companion specs? Can we do more advanced UA methodologies or UA methods? But for right now, right, it allows for easier contextualization, support for new UA profiles and standards, and helps with just general aggregation of all that data.
Yeah. To break it down to the bare bones, most simple form, if I've got 10 different Kep servers inside of my factory, UA Gateway allows me to see that information from one location.
Correct. Yeah. So you would be able to aggregate all of those, make that UA connection. Now I can go connect to the UA Gateway if I'm a UA client, and then I can see and browse via this one UA Gateway. I can browse to all those downstream servers, as opposed to in the past, you'd have to connect out to each of those individually.
That's right. And if I'm sitting in Steve's seat over on the Canary side of things, I just got really excited. Steve, why?
Well, not only have one location that I can browse, that I can connect to log on all the data that I need. I don't have to make a separate connection to each individual OPC server that might be out on the floor there. So that makes it nice for us because we have an OPC client for UA, and whether it's Kep server or Kep Plus, I can't remember what do we the gateway.
Yeah, UA Gateway, there it is.
UA Gateway. That makes it all much easier for us.
And this is the same compatibility, right? You're
right.
Canary to go engineer.
It doesn't matter to us.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the technical benefits. But you also mentioned, Kyle, just from a licensing management side, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine the headache that someone or a team of people would typically have inside an organization to just keep track versioning and licensing.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, and sometimes it's cartoonishly funny of just looking at like, oh my gosh, like we can see these Excel sheets, and you're like, whoa, that's absolutely insane. So yeah, the subtext here for all of this is with Kepware Plus, with all those technical benefits, the commercial benefit is, hey, I get one license ID, it unlocks all of the features of Kepware, and then just rinse and repeat however many times you need it. So if you need 100 servers, you go, great, one license ID, call us if you need another unlock. So it just keeps things a lot easier.
Yeah. And you said unlocks all of the benefits of Kepware. So that's more than just driver packs, right? That's
correct. Yeah, so that's our data logger. So if you want to send things to like a SQL database, it unlocks IoT gateway. So if you're trying to convert that industrial data to MQTT or REST, there's the advanced tags if you need to do some basic math and logic in Kepware, or if you want two data sources to talk to one another, you use advanced tags. So all of those features are unlocked for you to use, as opposed to, again, calling us, getting another license, different support, all that good stuff.
My assumption is that your larger enterprises have been the first to act on putting something in place, right? Is it a one-off onboarding path to get someone onto Kepware Plus? Is it kind of custom fit to each organization, or how's that work?
No, so, I guess what I'm hearing is what is the, hey, if I were to convert from Kep Server EX to Kepware Plus, like what does that look like?
Yeah.
No, it's very easy. I mean, they're very similar products. I mean, it's a separate install, but you install it the same way, just like you have for the last 30 years. It might look slightly different, right? The logo might be a little bit different. So that's the on-prem version, like the on-prem, or rather the on-prem component, like is going to look and feel very, very, very similar. For the SaaS component stuff, there's a couple of additional steps, obviously, getting set up in our system, logging in for the first time. But for on-prem, really the biggest difference is that you are installing an on-prem agent, and that agent is going to facilitate the communications between the actual on-prem servers and the communication up to that the SaaS capability. So that's really you're installing one additional component, and then maybe just moving the licenses over, doing a different install. But again, more or less the same process that everybody has done for the last 30 years.
Yeah, and obviously based on your client base, all the security elements are in place for IT buy-in or IT sign-off, and
of course,
and for people in the audience that are like, oh, there's no way this will work. No, I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world are doing this. Yes, it will. It's security.
Yeah, and we've done all sorts of security questionnaires, and there really hasn't been, to my knowledge, there really hasn't been a big issue of oh, this seems pretty insecure. No, we trust that we know what we're doing. We've taken the precautions. We've looked into it. But again, obviously, if you have concerns, we're more than happy to talk to those.
Okay, cool. And so I think, was it just over the summer last year where Kepware Plus was announced? We're coming up on the year old. Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yes. Yeah. So that SaaS capability has been around for a while, or about a year or so. The merging of the two just happened somewhat recently. So if there's confusion out there, well, I've heard about this Kepware Plus thing. You probably have, but now this is what we're looking at. It's that combination of the two.
Yeah.
It's the full solution, if you will.
Sure. And next Wednesday, we're going to show that off, right? I believe it's not you next Wednesday. Is it Ray?
No, we have Ray Labby, one of our principal solutions consultants for Kepware, who is much smarter and more well-versed than I am with this. So he's going to be walking the audience through all the ins and outs of the UA gateway, but also with Kepware Plus. So folks will be able to get to see the new web-based interface. We'll get to see all the configuration done, and of course, all of the great technical benefits of using our UA gateway.
Okay. I'm dropping in the comments right now the URL for the virtual workshop. So if you're watching us on LinkedIn, go ahead, and if you're not registered, please follow that link and register. I think we're already up to about 150 registrations last time I checked. So no pressure on Ray and Steve. But Kyle, you're off the hook for next week.
I am.
Now, while all of this
try to get smarter by next week. You're going to get stuck with me, and I don't know. Hopefully, I don't get dumber between now and next week. But I'll do my best to sharpen my skills.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. The good news, Canary has been engineered in a way that even I can use it, which means
even someone like myself or you, Jeff, can use it. Yeah,
that's right. It's funny. I actually I was doing a demo of Axiom last night, And it's funny how fast you can lose some of those capabilities. You know, I'm probably 6 to 9 months stale on doing an Axiom run through, and I found myself trying to remember some of the techniques that I was very used to doing just about 1.5 years ago. But it came together. Now, Steve, yeah.
Oh no, I was saying now you know why Ray's doing the demo. But yeah.
No, it's good though. But that's unfortunately, you know, that's we've got to keep those skills sharp. And Kyle, I know you do. And I think you're you're deprecating yourself, but I don't believe it. Steve, while in the last couple of months, there's been a couple new releases from Canary. One of them you guys are going to show off on Wednesday, and it fits perfectly with this concept of the OPC UA gateway. Now, walk us through, if you will, traditionally, what someone might do if they had 20,000 tags sitting on an OPC UA server using some nice structure, right? They might have 5, 6, 7 folder levels deep of those tag paths. How would someone create traditionally a logging session inside of Canary for 20,000 tags?
Yeah. Well, you know, if they're all in one branch, it wouldn't be too bad. You could open up that branch and do, you know, select all, and boom, you're done.
Is that the way that normally works? 20,000 tags in one branch?
You never know what you'll find out there. Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
Or you'll see 20,000 tags as its own branch. I've seen that as well. That's also fun. Yeah, so you would have to go browse through each branch, each node individually to select the tags that you would want, and, you know, add them to your logging session, to your configuration. And then, you know, that's how we did it with the old logger with OPC DA, and that was kind of just what you would do.
Yep.
And
that's
then
how everybody.
If new tags are added,
everybody's done it that way. It's not just Canary.
Sure.
That's
right.
And so integrators all over the country have built hacks on how to do that a bit more programmatically, right? They would modify the config file for that logging session. They would do copy and paste.
Yeah, if you're savvy with, you know, manipulating and creating the configuration file under the covers, then yeah, go for it. If you're not, if you're someone like myself, you can't do that because you need that UI to click all the buttons that you need to click.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, that was the old way. That was the old way. You said
that was the old way. Still there. You could, if you still want to do that, you know, you can do that. But, you know, in addition to that, the alternative now is, you know, you can subscribe what we call it tag based, which is the old way, and the new one is be the path based, which is essentially browsing for a specific node or branch, and then anything under that branch, you can add that to your session, and then, you know, you could add multiple branches into a single session if you needed to. And then maybe you don't want everything in that branch. We can apply some filtering on top of that. So it's essentially, I kind of compare it to like MQTT, where you're subscribing to a topic. You're subscribing to a branch in the OPC server. Yeah. And if there are certain things you want to include or exclude, you can build those filters on top of it.
Yeah. When did this feature come out? That's an incredibly powerful.
It would have been version, I think, 23. So the first release in 2023 would have had this.
Okay.
So, and then, and the other nice component is, you know, if you add, again, with the old way, if you were to add more tags to the OPC server, we're not aware of that. It's another manual process. Like, hey, I know these tags are available. I got to go in there and add them to my logging session. Whereas with the path-based approach, you can set up to auto browse if you want, or a certain time interval, or if you stop and start the collector, so it'll rebrowse those paths, say, oh, I've got new tags, let me add these on. So
wow,
it kind of automates the process.
You're talking auto discovery of new tags based on a topic namespace.
Yes.
That's figured with the ability to write regex rules for filtering.
Yeah, so like, yeah, it'd be common ones, like maybe it's tags that start with this string or end with this string, you know. But yeah, it supports the regular expressions, if you're familiar with those. Or I mean, I'm not very familiar with regular expressions, but even if it just contains a certain word in it, like I want to get everything that contains this in it, you just apply that word in for the filter. And so I'll grab everything as that.
Yeah. So I can filter in, I can filter out. Well, I can filter out essentially.
You can include or inclusion or exclusion rules. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just a nice working example. I may not want to historize my set points. And we know set points are going to be almost always there, it seems. I grab everything except in this folder set points. Can I do multiple? Can I target a top level folder and then inherently grab everything else inside of folders within that folder? Or do I have to?
Yeah, so it'll include everything underneath that branch.
Okay.
So if you want to do completely separate branches, you could do that as well. But yeah, essentially you pick almost like the parent node, and then any child assets, or not assets, but child nodes under it are included.
Historize all. Go. Basically, I could.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you're in an industry like oil and gas, where you're constantly bringing new assets online, this is going to feel very much like a feature overlap of what you've heard about MQTT, right? What's one of the main drivers for the adoption of MQTT outside of payload, outside of poll response versus pub sub. I get two very different technologies. I get that. But I'm just simply saying, if you're dedicated to OPC data logging, you've got two very exciting things that you've probably just heard: a way to manage all of your OPC servers, a way to see all of the data from your OPC servers from one secure endpoint, and a way to log all of that data, not from a direct to tag methodology, but from a branch methodology. And this is essentially, is this what you're going to be demoing on Wednesday? Is this the build out that you're going to do?
Yep. It's pretty easy. Just, it's essentially the same as browsing for tags manually. It's just instead of selecting individual tags, you're just going to select a branch.
Okay.
And then apply some filters on top of that. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. We'll probably, you think we'll use the full hour and a half on Wednesday, or is it going to be on the shorter side? It feels simple from what I'm hearing.
From my side, it's pretty simple. I can't speak for Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to go in here and say like, oh yeah, like the process is super complicated? No, yeah, like yes, it is very simple. It might feel a little unfamiliar, again, just because it's a new interface and kind of UI with Kepware, using that Kepware Plus SaaS capability. But the good news, and I'll use I'll reference a LinkedIn comment that was probably the funniest I've ever seen, but like not the old Windows 95 GUI from Kepware. Self-burn there. I'll take that on. But so it might look unfamiliar, but the process is largely the same. I would guess that might be the longest portion of it. But I had the pleasure of sitting in with Steve and Ray as they were building out the demo. And I don't want to use the word underwhelming, but it was just so simple. I was like, oh, that's it. Like I was expecting something else to come up. Like, oh, but no, it works very, very well. And it was incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
If you want the Windows 95 GUI, I can demo our logger administrator for you next week as well.
Perfect.
If you want to see that.
And misery loves company, right?
Is that the old, talking about the old DA logger?
Yeah.
I like the fact that Canary made a decision. If you're going to stick with DA, we're going to punish you from the UI perspective of sticking with.
It kind of sets the tone, like, oh, this is what it looks like. I wonder how this. I mean, it does actually work really well. And
it's sure. I mean,
you can install it locally. I wouldn't recommend installing it remotely, but
Yeah. One of my very first, Steve, before you came to Canary, one of my very first Canary experiences was I drove up to Towanda, Pennsylvania. And so Towanda is a town that used to be booming when the shale industry of Pennsylvania was booming. And then this town really just, when that got shut down, I mean, the town began to shut down. But there was a door and window manufacturer, composite door and window manufacturer in Towanda that was using Canary heavily. and just a terrible dusty environment, right? So they're basically taking sawdust and compacting sawdust with an adhesive to make door and window frames. So just sawdust everywhere. Actually, it's one of those factories where the walls are hinged because the likelihood of an explosion is so high from the particulate matter, the dust that's in the air. It would be really easy. And I think that factory actually had an explosion in its history. But anyway, my point is every single area and cell of that manufacturing process had its own data logger sitting right there on a server, on a physical box, sometimes on the floor, sometimes, strapped to a leg of the skid. And the guy that was kind enough to give me the tour said, "Hey, I want to show you something." And he unlocked a closet, and I looked in the closet, and there was just stacks and stacks and stacks of Windows machines in this closet. I'm like, what? Like, what's the deal here? He said, "Oh, for years, every time someone in the office, every time an engineer had an upgrade on their Windows machine, I grabbed the old one because for this plant to run, based on the technology that's running this plant, we have to have like Windows, pick a year from, like 98 or I forget which one it was. And I know I can't go get that anymore. So I keep the hardware because we'd lose these servers nonstop. They just aren't meant to run here. But it just, that's in my mind when I think about OPC DA logging sessions. That's what I think about, like 50 different servers out across the plant floor, all local to the equipment. No way to easily federate that data. And there's probably still a lot of plants across the world that are running that way, right?
Oh, I'd say with 100% confidence, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Don't fix water, wastewater. We're looking at you. Like, that there's water treatment facilities still out there running DA sessions. There's manufacturers all over the country running DA sessions. Kyle, have you been part of the migration path to get DA out the door and bring UA in?
Kepware, I think, had a hand in it. I would personally know. I think, Kepware has adopted, we've been doing UA for a while now. And I think what's been interesting with that is because Kepware still supports DA, what we've been seeing is a lot of these folks kind of using us as a sort of a band-aid or like a piecemeal to go to UA. So in other words, we'll use that your factory example there, right? So, hey, there's 50 of these DA servers all over the place. But let's say they got in a new historian, or they're trying to get data outside the plant. They want to use UA. They don't want to use DA because it's insecure, so on and so forth. What we've seen from an architecture standpoint are folks using Kepware to connect to those DA servers, get that DA data into Kepware, and then from there it gets converted to UA. So we're kind of doing like a DA UA conversion. So we see a lot of that. And then what that allows the customer to do is over time, pick away at some of those other DA servers.
One at a time, start doing the conversions as they need to.
Exactly.
And Steve, you said that the DA logging has dropped off significantly over the last couple of years from the support, what you see.
Just from the time I started, it seemed like everybody was doing DA logging. So now it's like I almost, never see it, with support. I monitor all support tickets that come in. It's like it's either OPC UA or MQTT. Those are probably the main, data collection methods that people are using for Canary anyways. I'm sure now there's still a lot out there because they're still running, right? I'm still confident that, 80 to 90% of data collection that people are using with Canary is still DA because they've just been running and hey, let's not touch it. But as far as like new installs and everything like that, I just don't see it anymore.
Yeah, sure. That's good. Well, guys, it just occurred to me that we're almost 40 minutes in and haven't told a dad joke, and that just feels wrong. I think I've realized now what happens if Alan's not here. Is we don't focus on the most important part of the conversation. I was inspired the other day. So twice in the last month, I've just had a dad joke pop into my head, that I put my name on as an author. I got on a plane a couple of weeks ago, and there was the pilots are standing there to do the little like meet and greet when you get on the plane, which I always find to be a bit funny anyway. But it allows me to like look and assess the capability of this man or woman, I guess, maybe like make a snap judgment on whether I'm going to put my tray in the upright position on landing. But I looked at him and said, "Hey, what do you call a pilot who doesn't have a plane?"
A bus driver?
You call him an Uber. You call him an Uber, Kyle.
I'm missing something here for sure.
Yeah. What do you call a pilot without a plane? You call him an Uber. Because he ain't going nowhere without one.
Oh, okay. All right.
Come on.
All right. Okay.
All right, yeah.
Well, I was going to tell one about a paper. I was going to tell a joke about a paper, but I won't because it's terrible.
Nice.
Mm.
Nice. All right, Steve. Can you make
All
Kyle?
right. There's one about a railroad. Shoot, I lost my train of thought.
Well done. Well done.
All right.
What do you call a Roman? What do you call a Roman cannibal?
Oh. All right.
Solid. That's solid.
Hey, what did the cowboy say at his second rodeo? This ain't my first rodeo.
Oh. All right. That's a good one. I can appreciate that one for sure.
All right. Cool. That was good, guys. Hey, thank you. Let's. I think we covered what we're going to do on Wednesday. Kyle, appreciate the explanation on Kepware Plus.
Sure.
I guess maybe if somebody wanted to learn more, let's end with this kind of next steps. If somebody wants to learn more about Kepware Plus, they reach out to their local distributor. Is there some online material? Do you try it out? How's that work?
Yeah, so I would say the first is go to our the PTC website, search for Kepware Plus. You should be able to navigate and find it, but it's got all the information on there. There should be sort of a walkthrough video. If it's not on there, it's definitely on YouTube.
Okay.
And also, if you want to learn more, definitely tune in to next week's episode of Integrate Live. That's probably the best place.
Hey, I found a Kepware Plus article on PTC's website. It is in the chat. Steve, what about someone wants to try out this new feature in Canary?
Yeah, if you want to look specifically at the OPC UA collector and its capabilities, you can go to our Help Center. We have our knowledge base on there. So if you go to helpcenter.canarylabs.com, you have a knowledge base section. There's a whole data collection component in there, and there's 2 articles in there that talk about OPC UA collector. If you want to look specifically at that topic.
You said version 23?
Yep.
That is screen tag. There it is. Okay, cool. Dropping that in the chat as well. Perfect. And of course, as we said, if you want to see a really nice demo that I'm guessing they could, after the demo, they could play it back, and probably this is going to show them the full configuration or a step-by-step process as we typically do on how to take what they've just seen and go apply it in their instance. We will see you on Wednesday, same time. Make sure you use the registration and get pre-registered. And as always, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And Steve, it's good to see you. Kyle, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back.
All right, everybody. We will see you on Wednesday. Thanks so much for everything that you do to support the community. And if you haven't been to our sponsors' websites in a while, great way to show them love. For Sponsor and Integrate Live, take a visit. And until next time, we will see you then. Thank you.
Cool.